Welcome to the Pathways to Success. I'm Julian Placino, recruiting professional turned success speaker, show host, and media entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to helping you find your unique pathway to success by having conversations that educate, inspire, and transform. Together, we'll interview some of the world's greatest leaders and uncover their secrets to success. Thanks for tuning in, and on to the show. Welcome to episode 216 of the Pathways to Success, where we have conversations with inspiring leaders about their business and their keys to success. I'm Julian Placino, your host, and we have a great show in store for you today. It is my pleasure to welcome customer experience consultant and founder at Seaton CX, Dave Seaton. Dave, welcome to the Pathways to Success. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Julian. I am doing great. It is amazing to be here. I've been a fan of your show for 3 years, and here I am. So this is a dream come true.
And here you are indeed. And as you mentioned, I've known you now for probably at least 3 years, and it's been amazing to see your career evolution, so I'm excited to catch up and dig in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dave, you have gone out and started your own company, Seaton CX.
Right.
Tell us, what is Seaton CX?
It is me. It's a customer experience consulting firm where I partner with tech companies to help transform their customer experiences and grow revenue.
Gotcha. So why now? What is your why behind starting your own company?
I think, like many people during the pandemic the last couple years, I was asking some really existential questions about my purpose. And I was thinking about my first camp out with my dad when I was a young kid. And about all I remember is the end of that, when Dad told me to go around the campsite and pick up all the trash. And so I was doing that, but I found some trash that wasn't ours. And so I left it there. Well, after I was done, Dad came around to check my work, and he saw that trash. He said, "Hey, son, you missed a piece." I said, "No, I didn't, Dad. That's not our trash." And he looked at me and he said, "Son, we always leave the campsite cleaner than we found it, so the people who come after us can enjoy it." And that really resonated me, and that's what I now see as my purpose, to leave the world a better place than I found it. And I do that by improving customer experiences and developing leaders. And that's what Seaton CX is about.
I love that. What do you hope to do differently than perhaps some other consulting organizations that are also in customer experience?
I really focus in on software as a service and tech companies. I've got over 20 years in the B2B tech industry, 15 in software as a service, and there's a real opportunity for customer experience to be the new differentiator. So gone are the days when tech companies differentiated on features and functionality in the product. These days, everybody's got the same tech stack, the same cloud, the same features, and the rate of innovation has increased such that companies are putting out features faster than their users can learn about them and use them. So customer experience becomes the new competitive advantage for tech companies.
I see. So let's go ahead and jump into things then. Let's establish kind of the what. So we're speaking about customer experience in the context in which you serve companies. What is customer experience?
Customer experience is your customer's perception of your brand, of your company, across all of their interactions. So it's different than customer service. Customer service is an interaction with a customer, we call it a touch point, where you're resolving a problem, a question, or a request that the customer has. But if you zoom out to the entire customer journey, from learning about your company, to researching it, to becoming a customer, to implementing the technology, to using the product, to interacting with customer service and support, ultimately to renewing, buying additional products, and telling other people, that's the entire customer experience. And great customer experiences don't happen by accident. They are intentionally designed.
So how is customer experience measured?
Ultimately, in business performance, in revenue. But to link your revenue to your customer experience, you measure different aspects appropriate to the problem that you're trying to solve. It starts with the voice of the customer. What are your customers saying about their interactions with your brand? And there's a couple different metrics we can use, from Net Promoter Score to customer satisfaction to customer effort score. The nuts and bolts aren't as important as picking the metric that's appropriate for the problem that you're trying to solve, measuring the customer experience, and linking that back to the financial performance of your company.
So make the case then, with CEOs watching the show right now, with all the different priorities that they have, that they're targeting at right now, why customer experience? Why should this be a focus of theirs in 2022 and moving forward?
Well, let me tell you a story. So I walked onto a new job in 2006, and there sitting on the desk was a gray Cisco phone. Now, the company had paid a lot of money for those phones. They had made an investment in that hardware. And as the company grew and moved, I carried that phone from desk to desk, and cubicle to cubicle, and office to office for the next 13 years. Because the company had already invested in the hardware, and they were stuck with whatever service and support was available for that hardware. Well, when the phones finally retired, what did they replace it with? Zoom, a cloud solution. And if they have a problem with Zoom, if they're not having a good customer experience, they can switch next month. And so as technology has changed from on-prem technology and hardware and buying technology, we're now in the subscription economy where we're renting technology, we're subscribing to technology, and customers can switch easier than ever.
So as far as that goes then, let's say that you're doing kind of an audit for a company. Like, how would they begin to see if they're having an issue? What are some of the symptoms of having a customer experience issue?
Financially, it starts with churn, which is the word we use in the customer experience discipline for customers who leave. They leave, they don't renew their subscriptions, they go to a competitor. So if you've got a churn problem, then you have a customer experience problem. You can also look at your customer feedback, customer reviews. Are they posting on social media? What are they saying when, especially in B2B, you need a referral? Are they willing to refer you in the industry? So all of those different indicators track back to your customer experience.
Gotcha. So where do you start? If you're helping a company build a customer experience program, what are the things that you look at? Where does someone begin?
I always start with a problem. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And then the first thing we do is we go out and get the voice of the customer. We see what are customers saying about the company and specifically about that problem. From then, we can build towards a solution, improve the customer experience, show the return on investment from that project, and then expand the program. So a lot of companies think that, well, in the beginning, they need to go out and buy enterprise software, and there's some great ones out there, and build this robust customer experience program from scratch. Instead, what I do with companies is we break it down and we take the first step. We realize the benefit, and then we take the next step. And so we build it slowly over time rather than trying to have a big bang approach.
Gotcha. It seems so much of what you do is really understanding the customer. You mentioned specifically the voice of the customer.
Right.
What are some tools or strategies that we could do to figure out what exactly is going on with them?
Well, everybody's familiar with surveys, right? And in fact, what we're seeing in the last couple of years is that there's actually been something called survey fatigue, where companies are sending out, number one, really bad surveys, and customers are just getting tired of that. But there are plenty of other ways to get voice of the customer. We look at it in solicited, meaning I'm asking you, or unsolicited, meaning I'm mining social media reviews, ratings, comments, support interactions with the customer support department. And so we can combine this solicited and unsolicited feedback to get a clear picture of the voice of the customer. In the solicited feedback category, one of the things I do is customer interviews. And there is no deeper source of insight than actually sitting down with a customer, or over Zoom these days, and having this 2-hour dialogue about their experience. You get deep, deep insights about how your customers perceive your brand, much better than you would ever get from a survey.
I see. So Dave, there is an outstanding result that you have been able to create in your career, perhaps one of the most significant ones that you had, but you actually helped create $991,000 in recurring revenue for a particular company by transforming customer experience.
Right.
I want to backtrack in terms of what did you exactly do to be able to do that? So set the stage for that.
Okay. The company had a churn problem. And we analyzed the churn reasons and found that there was a significant number of customers leaving, going to a competitor, because of dissatisfaction in a professional services organization, service and support. And the internal opinion of customer service organization was that customers cared about turnaround time most of all. We need to get these resolved as quickly as possible. If you talk to a different part of the organization, a different department, they would say, no, support's wrong. It's not about turnaround time, it's about personalization. The customers want to feel like they're having an ongoing dialogue with the company, not be treated as individual one-off instances. Well, they were both right. Both those things were important, but they were like number 3 and 4 on the list. Number 1 and 2 on the list were two things no one was focused on. The first one, customers didn't want the service in the first place. The environment had changed since the product and service was designed, and customers now wanted to do that work themselves.
Interesting.
And so they were frustrated that they even had to reach out to the company to get that work done. Secondly, they said, well, when we do have to reach out to you, it's really, really difficult. We want it to be effortless. So ultimately, we're satisfied with the result, but it was really hard to get there. And that data tracks back to what we know in the customer experience world about the things that are three most important things in the customer experience. First is success. Can I do the thing that I needed to do, right? Can I get the outcome or get the value from the product or service that I bought? That's the price of admission. right? If customers aren't getting success, then you've got a real problem because you've completely missed expectations. The second one is effort, like we talked about. I'm getting the outcome I want, but how easy is it to get there? And then the third is emotion. What emotions is the company triggering in the human beings that are on the other end of that interaction? Whether that's a B2C interaction where that consumer is the buyer, user, purchaser, sole decision maker, or a B2B interaction where the human being on the other end who's making that buying decision may not ever actually log into a software application that they're buying for the enterprise. So you've got to manage those experiences across success, effort, and emotion to trigger that customer loyalty.
Interesting. The big takeaway that I'm getting is that there was a delta between what the company thought the customer wanted and what the customer actually wanted.
Yes.
And then you went and discovered that. So the problem was churn. Your process was going to actually talk to the customer, right? So I'm curious, like how many interviews do you need to have be able to have reliable data of this is what we need to fix?
Well, my process is we first identify what are the ideal target customers. Because you can't be everything to everybody, right? If you're an airline targeting business customers, you'll have leisure travelers on your plane, but you want to target the business customers that are your segment that's making the most of your revenue. So step one, identify, well, what are the target customers we need to talk to? Secondly, among that group, who are the extreme users? Because the extreme users, those customers on either end of the bell curve, are going to give us the deepest insights. Either they're heavy consumers of the product or service, or they're very, very light. And so depending on the size of the customer base and the size of the company, we conduct those interviews with the extreme users at the target clients and come back to use that qualitative research to come up with a list of value drivers that are important to those customers. But then we go validate those learnings across the broad customer base. And that gives us the quantitative analysis to go with the interviews to be able to tell us in stack ranked order what are the most important things to the customer. And with that insight, then we can go transform the experiences and meet those customer needs.
Interesting. So it has to start with the customer. So what was the conversation? What did you find out? What did you keep seeing over and over and over and again? Like, hey, ring the alarm bells. This has got to change. So what was that like?
It was really exciting. Being in this was. At a time where we could visit customers in their place of business. And so being there with customers, seeing where they worked, seeing this environment, and just sitting down and having a conversation, really, really incredible.
Gotcha. So for me, the benefit, I always think in terms of increasing revenue, saving costs, things like that. What other benefits have we not yet discussed as far as looking internally about our customer experience for our customers?
Well, there's the whole culture of your company, right? Which is very top of mind for companies right now, going through the Great Resignation and really puzzling over how can we retain our talent. And when you have a company that's focused on serving and meeting customer needs, it creates a great culture where people are thriving and they're excited about the work that they're doing because they're connecting that purpose to meeting customer needs, not just meeting profitability.
Interesting. So have you been able, with the quantitative data that you've seen, are you able to tie levels of customer experience with internal employee retention?
It's always a moving target, right? depends on the size of the organization. The two are definitely linked. So the research is out there in the industry that supports that linkage between employee experience and customer experience. And they go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other because your employees are delivering those customer experiences.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the solution. And you've talked about how you've done it for other companies. Let's say that a company decides to work with you and utilize your service. Where do you start? How does that look?
Let's start with the problem that you're trying to solve.
Okay.
Okay. If the problem is customer churn, then let's take a look at the customers who have churned. Let's identify the reasons that are driving that churn. If your customers haven't told you, somebody in the organization probably has a pretty good idea. And then we'll just slice it up. Okay, what's the biggest bucket that appears to be driving churn? Okay, let's solve that problem first. Let's go out, let's get the voice of the customer, let's bring it back, let's analyze it, and make a game plan for transforming those experiences so that we're meeting the customer needs.
Gotcha. And I know there is sort of a method that you have created over the years that is proprietary to the way that you do things. Could you share a little bit about that? That's
basically what we've been talking about here. I call it the CX booster rocket, or the voice of the customer booster rocket. And everybody's launching rockets these days, SpaceX and Blue Origin and all those guys. A booster rocket, they're those rockets that go on the side that help the main rocket get enough thrust to break through Earth's gravity and go into orbit. And so this project is a booster rocket that can help a company build or revitalize their CX program.
Gotcha. I want to talk about some of the specific products that you're bringing here into the market. But before we do, what else should we be talking about when it comes to customer experience? What else should our audience know?
So there's there's some bad advice out there. Okay. And the bad advice is this: imagine yourself in your customer's shoes, and then you will know what it feels like, and you can make decisions to improve the customer experience. Okay, that's bad advice for two reasons. One, especially in B2B, most of us have never been a customer of the product or service that we're using.
Right.
The second reason is, even if you are a customer of your own product or service, you now have a sample size of one.
Right.
So go out and collect some more voice of the customer. Classic story is Best Buy. In the early 2000s, they were facing competition not from Circuit City, but from Amazon and Walmart. And the leadership team of Best Buy became obsessed with the idea of, why would someone leave the store without buying anything? And so they started out in front of the stores with a video camera and a microphone, talking to people who left the store without buying anything. Long story short, they identified 5 different customer segments. One of the biggest and most important ones they called the busy moms. Now, the busy moms went into a Best Buy, often with kids in tow. The kids run off to the video game display. The mom's trying to buy a gift for somebody in her life. She's trying to keep an eye on the kids wherever they went, and talking to the sales associate who's rambling on about megabytes and gigahertz, and it's too much, so she gathers up the kids and leaves. So Best Buy, looking at their segment of busy moms and the other segments, redesigned stores around those customer needs. So they put kid-attracting displays in every department, so the kids were never too far from mom. They retrained the sales associates. Instead of babbling off tech specs, they're now talking about, how does this device integrate with your home? How easy or hard is it to set up? Where can you go to for help if you need help setting up the device? And the stores that they redesigned around their customer needs, profits were boosted 9%.
Wow.
Now, here's how it ties it all back. Okay, those stores were designed by men who, despite their best intentions, could not imagine themselves in the shoes of a busy mom and design a store based on imagination. So I tell people, if you're doing CX by pretending you're the customer, you're doing pretend CX.
And that, I think, is an invaluable lesson. So assuming what you know what it's like versus actually knowing what it's like through the lens and through the voice of the customer.
That's right.
Wow. I'm curious, what other mistakes have you seen that you have seen when it comes to implementing this?
Chasing the wrong thing. Being driven by trying to meet a metric, whether it's a vanity metric, or working off a benchmark that doesn't apply to your company or your industry or isn't a trusted benchmark. There really is no shortcut for understanding your own customers and their needs.
Right. Gotcha. Well, Dave, I want to talk about some of the products that you have. You have the CX Influence Playbook. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mentioned my purpose was two things, customer experience consulting and leadership development. And so this year I have launched leadership development courses, starting with the CX Influence Playbook. Now, the CX Influence Playbook is going to be an online course that teaches customer experience leaders how to influence their coworkers to make customer experience a priority. It's based in emotional intelligence and psychology and leadership to boost the level of influential leadership in the CX community. So I talk to a lot of CX leaders, and I unfortunately hear a common theme, and that's, well, that VP of Ops didn't prioritize training, so our customer experience didn't improve. Or I was butting heads with the CTO about our Voice of the Customer program, so we didn't make any progress. And I feel for those people because I've been there and I've been through the doubts and the questions about, is CX, some woo-woo touchy-feely thing, or does it actually drive business results? But my approach was different. Every time I got a no or a rejection, instead of blaming the other guy for not getting it, I looked in the mirror and I said, Dave, how can you be a better influencer? And over time, I developed a set of techniques that I used to help bring people along on the journey that were quite effective. And so I am building those into the CX Influence Playbook. Now, in true CX fashion, I'm not going to go off into my closet and record the thing and then release it upon the world. I'm actually building it from the customer needs backwards. So I'm starting out sharing the material on workshops and webinars, getting customer feedback, and then I'll use that to make the online course as good as possible so I can help as many people as possible in the CX community.
So it's based on proven results.
That's right. That's right.
Gotcha.
Now, the first thing, as I'm building this out, I realized we needed a foundation of emotional intelligence. So I'm actually starting with a small, bite-sized leadership-focused emotional intelligence course that's going to be light on theory, just enough to understand what's going on, and heavy on application. And that's going to be called Mind Over Matter. Matter like the emotion, like you're getting mad.
Right.
And so the first Mind Over Matter workshop is happening on February 9th. You can go to mindovermatter.com. And for your Pathways listeners, there's a coupon code. So if you're a Pathways listener, you can go to mindovermatter.com, enter the coupon code Pathways, and you'll get almost 50% off. So I'm knocking $17 off the price so you can attend the workshop for $20.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for sharing that with our viewers today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Dave, I want to close with keys to success. So the show is called Pathways to Success, and I love learning how people have become successful. What have you done specifically? Obviously, you've been an incredible executive in your career, now starting your business. And one thing that you're passionate about speaking on is leadership, right? So where do you want to start with that? How would you begin to coach someone to develop their leadership ability?
Well, I've become enamored with this idea of superpowers. And I believe a superpower, it's a gift, a talent. There's a lot of different words for it out there. But I believe everybody gets one. And we spend the first part of our life figuring out what our superpower is. So mine was problem solving. Now, the first decade of my career, I was a computer programmer.
You're an engineer?
I was.
What did you write?
I wrote user interfaces for telecom testing equipment.
Okay.
I wrote healthcare algorithms, but I was a computer programmer. And
I think that's interesting because of the engineering mindset, and you applied it to customer experience. Right.
Right. But what I realized about myself was that banging out code on a computer was just one way of solving problems. And it wasn't the code that I got excited about, it was figuring out the little puzzles and solving those problems. When I had that epiphany, then I moved into, it opened my eyes to solving bigger problems and different kinds of problems. And that's when I took my first management job, and really where I had to learn about leadership for the first time. So I would say the first thing is find your superpower. Then the next thing that really made an impact was I heard, it was probably on a Tim Ferriss podcast, they were talking about a second superpower. And the comment was, you know, if you've got two superpowers, if you can solve problems and you can communicate well, then you reach this whole new level of performance. And so my second superpower, a mentor actually called it out on me. He pulled me aside and he said, you know, Dave, you're a pretty good presenter. If you actually worked on this, you could be really good. And so that's what started me down the journey to what I think of as my second superpower, is how I was able to present in meetings. So I could solve the problem, and then I could present in meetings and bring everyone along on that journey so they could understand it and the impact and lead towards further progress. And then that has morphed into the keynote speaking that I'm doing. And, you know, last year, I think I presented at 9 conferences in 12 months. It was pretty crazy. And so, you know, that's what I would say to people is one, figure out what your gift is, what your first superpower is, and then after that, start looking for a second one.
How did you come to realize your first and second superpower? Well, you said the second one, your mentor called it out. Yeah. How did you find that primary one?
The support team at the company I was working for, the support team quit. And so rather than hire more support people, they said, well, we'll get our developers to do some support. And so I got put in
Not a good idea. Yeah.
the support rotation. And at first I hated it. I was ready to quit. But then as I got into it, I kind of liked it. And that was when it began to click that, hey, it's not banging out code. It's actually solving problems that gets me excited.
Interesting. Okay, so that was kind of a fortuitous...
Stumbled upon it, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, Dave, I want to close out the show here just to kind of learn a little bit more about you personally. But before we do that, you know, the show is called Pathways to Success. What other advice would you give for our viewers to achieve success, to draw out the best version of themselves?
Never stop learning.
Yeah.
You know, I was a computer programmer, and then I had to learn leadership when I got my first management job. And right out of the gate, I was a horrible leader. But I went out and and went down that journey of learning leadership, and I became better. And I went from manager to director to vice president in 3 years.
Wow. By
applying what I had learned. And then later on in my career, I learned about emotional intelligence. And then later on, I learned about customer experience. And every new thing that I learn takes me a little further down the path of living into my purpose.
I love that. Never stop learning. So Dave, let's close with a few kind of fun, rapid round questions here for you, just to kind of get to know you a little bit, okay? So Dave, what is your favorite food?
Burgers.
Burgers, okay. What is your favorite music? What are you listening to right now?
Indie rock.
Indie rock, okay. So that came quickly.
Yeah.
So what have you been binge watching on Netflix or streaming or anything like that?
I don't. I don't watch TV. I watch maybe 1 hour of TV a week. I like the Grand Tour.
Okay.
From the Top Gear guys, they're now doing the Grand Tour on Amazon Prime. Big fan of Cars, and those guys are hilarious. So if I was going to watch something when a new episode comes out,
it's going to be that. You're too busy learning and growing. I totally get that too. Honestly, it's like before I met Rosie, I know she's watching right now. I didn't watch a whole lot of TV, but I totally get that. So, Dave, what is one fact about yourself that most people would find surprising?
I am a musician.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm surprised. I didn't know that. What do you play?
Guitar is my main instrument.
Get out of town. Okay.
I piddle on all the other ones.
Yeah.
I'm not a gigging musician right now. I gave that up probably a decade ago. But yeah, I was in a lot of bands. I played around town quite a bit in the early 2000s. I've played on a record that's on iTunes.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Man, we got a link to that. I will have more questions for you after this interview. So, okay, awesome.
All right.
Well, Dave, final question here for you. The show is called Pathways to Success. What is your personal definition of success?
Living a life that I'm proud of.
Well, I think that's great. I think that's a wonderful definition of success. So Dave, this has been absolutely amazing. If you would share with our viewers how to contact you, how to find you, how to connect with you online.
Sure. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as Dave Seaton. I'm on Twitter at Seaton CX, my company name. SeatonCX.com is my consulting website. Dave Seaton Leadership is my training website. And of course, mindovermatter.com will take you to my training website, right to the workshop on February 9th.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to have all your contact information in the show notes as well, Dave. So this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Julian. It's been great.
And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pathways to Success.